Hello everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Now, I know that we're kind of in the middle of a Soul Calibur lore saga at the moment, but Thorgi just dropped his Under Night video, and this is something I've been looking forward to for a very long time. Kane and I have already streamed Under Night In-Birth 2, and that is a game that we had an immense amount of fun with. It's kind of unfortunate that during the time we were streaming it, Kane basically broke his fingers. He couldn't really play for the majority of the streams. But regardless, we still played a lot offline after he healed up, so it's good. We did pick up a few bits and pieces of the lore from reading some of the story descriptions for the characters, but I'm very curious to know a lot more about the series, as well as whatever happened in the previous games. But of course, if you guys for some reason haven't already, please go and support Thorgi. Link to that very top of the description, like always. Oh, and also this will likely be a multi-parter. If you guys can't find the next part, I either haven't uploaded it or YouTube isn't recommending it to you, so make sure to check the description for the playlist of all the videos that we reacted to from Thorgi. With all that out of the way, let's get to it.
About 10 years ago, I was in a bar in Union Square. They were hosting a video game night, and the entire room was filled with monitors, each of them playing a different game from a different console and a different genre. There was a ton of variety. I spent the night playing Power Stone, Mario Kart, Nidhogg, a bunch of classics, and some personal favorites. However, as the night went on, I had thought. Every game there was one that I had played many times over, and it made me want something new. I started to miss the arcade days where I could just walk into one and suddenly there'd be some brand new title that I had never heard of and it would blow my mind and become an instant favorite. And it had been a while since I had gotten that feeling. Well, as I sat at the bar drinking my rum and coke minus the rum, suddenly the screen on the wall switched to a different game. It was a fighting game. And I had no idea what it was. There was some blonde kid with a sword fighting a tall, lanky monster in a moonlit urban environment. It had a style that was fashionable, modern, totally different from anything else out there. It was using sprites that were nostalgic, but they were so crisp and clean that they felt brand new. It was fast-paced and it...
Dude, I'm sorry to cut Thorgi off here in this intro, but I listen to Raito's music basically every day. I keep getting badges for being in the top 0.5% of listeners on YouTube Music for Raito's soundtrack for Uni 2. It's just so good, man.
Still simple enough for me to follow. The music was... Actually, I have no idea what the music was like. I was in a bar. There were like 200 people talking.
Yeah, there was no
I couldn't
music.
hear a thing. But it was probably cool too. I spent the rest of the night searching for what game this was, what console it was on, but nobody knew. And so for years, this became my Cinderella game. I kept trying to track it down, remember names of characters or things that I could describe about, but sadly, if you just type blonde kid with a sword stain in a parking lot into a Google search, it's not as helpful as you might think. But after years, I finally found it, and what I found was a title with some of the most accessible combat out there, while having nearly unlimited potential.
That is very true, actually. I am still surprised till today that Under Night In-Birth 2, it has some of the most complex systems that we've run into when it came to anime 2D fighters. Well, to be fair, we haven't played nearly enough of them. There's probably a ton more that are way more complex. But it has a level of accessibility that a lot of other fighting games don't, and a tutorial that I think covers, as Kane described it, the 0.5 step between step 1 and step 2. Which a lot of other fighting games just kind of forget about. Yeah, they'll teach you how to do this thing, and then they'll teach you how to do this thing. But then Under Night In-Birth says, this is why you do this thing. This is how you should be thinking when you're about to do this thing, and how it would give you some sort of advantage to then do the next thing that we're going to teach you. So honestly, in the future, I wouldn't be surprised if I maybe recommended somebody who wanted to get into fighting games with more motion inputs, that maybe Under Night In-Birth could be a pretty good start. Personally, whenever I recommend my friends to get into fighting games, it's always got to be Grand Blue, because Grand Blue just has a very low ceiling of execution, but also teaches you the fundamentals for approaching a fighting game, and I just want them to have fun, to learn how fighting games are fun before getting into all the nitty-gritty technical stuff. But for those who have kind of gone past that barrier and want to learn more, I feel like Under Night is just kind of the perfect one to get into for anime 2D fighters.
One of the best soundtracks in the entire genre, a cast of characters that were instantly memorable, and a dedicated player base that has built this game up from obscure cult classic into a main stage champ.
I am so glad that there's a pretty dedicated player base to Under Night, because whenever you want to learn a character, you can basically just go into the Discord and there's going to be like several Google documents written by people collecting everything. All the knowledge that they have from playing tournaments with that character within that same Google Doc, and you can learn so much from them. Can't really say that about every single fighting game out there.
So grab your insulators, charge up your grids, and get ready to go Vorpal as I explain to you what the hell any of that just meant. This is the Under Night in Birth retrospective.
Yeah, it took a little bit for us to learn about all the technical names for things, but once you get it, you get it. Yeah, dude, just listen to that. I can't even describe what kind of feeling it evokes within me. I just feel happy listening to this music. It's so anime. Awesome montage.
Welcome, World Warriors, to part 8 of the Street Fighter retrospective. In this part, we're going to be looking at all the brand new characters who have been added in Season 3. All 2 of them, and whoa, wait, stop, hold up, back up, sorry. That's on me, everybody. My mistake. You know, when you, do one retrospective over the course of 2 years, talking about one franchise, you kind of just get into a pattern. Let's try that again, shall we? Welcome to another episode of the Fighting Game Retrospective. And in this one, we're going to be tackling a game that I have been wanting to talk about for a while. Under Night in Birth is a series that's been steadily growing within the FGC for the past decade, has a look and style that's all its own, and has...
I mean, isn't Under Night in Birth 2 also kind of a mainstay? Well, on the main stage? Like, I'm pretty sure we have showcases of it on the main stage. It's not just like a sideshow anymore. That being said, it's still probably more niche than Guilty Gear. I feel like Guilty Gear is likely the most popular anime fighter out there, but I could be wrong. We're getting there though, and people are kind of realizing how good Under Night is.
So many unique mechanics that make it stand out from other fighters. And yet, I'd be willing to say that this still remains a title that most players know nothing about. But before we begin, I want to say I'm going to be referencing a lot of interviews and articles in this video, and I'll be linking them in the description down below, but I want to go ahead and give a special shout out to the independent In-Birth Wiki. Because when I said that I was doing an Under Night retrospective, the person who runs that wiki reached out to me and said, hey, I've got a bunch of interviews that might be helpful, and I appreciate that. So shout out to them, and I'll make sure to link their wiki in the description down below as well. Now, to understand the story of Under Night in Birth, we must first learn the story of French bread. Not that one.
You tap them out, they prove you wrong, but Taylor with the...
Oh my god, Neko Arc.
If nobody got me, I know my Neko Arc homies got me. Can I get an amen?
What? What is this? Melty Blood? Yeah, that's right. I still haven't tried on Melty Blood. That's another anime fighter we gotta get to.
That one. Yes, Under Night in Birth is the original title from developer Soft Circle French Bread, and French Bread was founded by Nobuya Narita. When Narita was a student, he loved fighting games, especially from Capcom and SNK, and he dreamed of growing up to be a fighting game developer. So after graduating college, he was hired by a game company. A game company that went bankrupt in less than a year. So he now found himself out of work, and he realized he had two paths before him. Search for another studio to work for and hope that turned out better this time.
Or make his own.
Or give up on his dream.
No.
But thankfully, Narita chose the third option. He said, screw it, I'm going to do it myself. So he gathered up several other
If you want a job done right, you gotta do it yourself.
developers who had also just been fired from that same studio, then called up a friend of his who had been part of the Dojin circle since the 80s, and turned that group into Watanabe Productions. Now, in case you're like me 6 months ago and you have no idea what a Dojin circle is, it's essentially a Japanese term for a group of developers and artists who come together to create low-budget projects that are typically defined by their passion and are often fan works using characters from pre-established sources.
Yeah, I think the correct translation or understanding of that is fan work, essentially. For the rest of the internet, though, you may recognize that and think of something completely different. Which, I mean, I get it. I understand. It's most often used in that way. But no, it kind of refers to all fan works.
In the mid-90s and early 2000s, Japan was seeing a boom in Dojin games, also called Dojin Soft. Watanabe Productions would put out their first game in 1998, Queen of Hearts 98, based on the visual novel Too Hard and using combat that was heavily influenced by multiple games, including a dash of King of Fighters, as you can probably tell from the giant 98 in the title, and a heaping helping of Asuka 120%, which might have had something to do with the fact that some of the members of Watanabe Productions had actually worked for Asuka 120's developer Phil and Cafe right before they shut down the same year. So
I see. Okay, that makes a whole lot of sense. I've heard this game referenced, actually, as being like one of the first anime fighters out there, where a lot of people would reference something like Darkstalkers, but even Darkstalkers had a source of inspiration, and it would seem to be this. There could even be something even further behind this, but like, I don't know. This is just the knowledge I picked up from the comment section.
In other words, if you were a fighting game developer whose studio got shut down, Watanabe Productions was going to collect you like a Pokemon. Now, if you've never heard of Asuka 120%, it's a rather niche game, even among niche fighting game fans, but the impact it has left is rather large. Many people credit it as being one of the founding fathers of the quote-unquote anime fighter genre,
yeah, there you go.
as it introduced mechanics like clashing, gatling, and much more. If you want to know more about the history of Asuka 120, then I highly recommend checking out Gal Winquote's video on this subject, which I'll be linking in the card here. Queen of Hearts 98 ended up blowing up, selling over 100,000 copies, which for a Dojin game was massive.
Yeah.
And so, Watanabe Productions took off and would spend the next several years launching multiple Dojin games, with arguably their biggest success being Glove on Fight, a play on the Atlas fighting game Groove on Fight, featuring really charming chibi sprites and a cast of characters from various other Dojin games and animes. However, even though their Dojin ventures had been successful, Narita knew it couldn't last. In an interview with French website Boss Grosbean, Narita said, quote, Watanabe was a Dojin circle that did everything and anything, including things we prefer not to mention anymore. We really went in all directions at once, and the circle had grown way, way too much. We thought that we might run into issues if we kept going that way.
I think that's fair. Like, obviously, you gotta start from somewhere, but if you stay there forever, then you're never really gonna grow or achieve the dreams that you originally had. And even, like, the image that you have of yourself in the future may not necessarily be exactly how things turn out, because I obviously did not imagine myself here on YouTube as a VTuber. I imagined myself, if I was this, I'd be doing very different content, but, you know, that's not how life works. So you gotta grow, you gotta move on.
Well, that doesn't sound good. Yeah, I read a lot of interviews with Narita, and he comes off as a very cheerful, friendly person, but the moment that he gets asked about Watanabe Productions, he gets quiet quick. And there might be a reason for that. It's because Dojin games don't tend to be... What's the word that I'm looking for here? Oh, right, legal. Yeah, you might have heard me mention that Watanabe was making games using existing series and characters, and you probably thought, oh wow, how did this little studio get permission to use those characters? That's the fun part. They didn't. Yeah, because so many Dojins tend to be fan projects, they often reside within that legal gray area. And in all honesty, most companies are either cool with Dojins existing of their properties, or they don't think it's worth the time and energy to pursue legal action.
I think companies who pursue the creators of fan work probably ain't gonna prosper. Not gonna lie. Cause, I don't know exactly the number of people who have gotten into the FGO gacha game from reading one of their spicier dojins, but I'm certain that's a pretty big chunk of the money that they make, even if the dojin itself isn't really affiliated with FGO. But yeah, we all know how some Japanese companies can be sticklers about this, and how a lot of copyright law can be over there. It's different everywhere. Over there, I think it's pretty darn strict.
However, that does not change the fact that they could pursue legal actions whenever they want to, and the moment you start selling those dojins, that gray area gets a little bit darker.
Well, technically speaking, a lot of companies that make video games could pursue legal action against people who do Let's Plays, but they're smart enough to know to not do that. It would really kill the momentum of your game, and I don't know why you try to get rid of free advertising. In fact, you'd probably just make your game or the name of your studio kind of notorious, and people maybe not want to support you. But technically speaking, they could. Like, I've had issues with that before when it came to us playing through the Batman Arkham series. I had to drop Arkham City because basically all the music in there was copyrighted, and I tried to appeal it saying it was a Let's Play. We're streaming the game, having fun playing through your game legally. No, they said. You're not allowed to play the game. You can, without the audio. You know what? I don't think that's going to be such a great experience. I think I'm just going to move on. Play that on my own time if I have the time to.
Sometimes these dojin projects can only be sold at special conventions that are made just for them, or through smaller personal channels that are a bit more under the table. And because of that, no matter how popular these games were, Watanabe Productions still had to be pretty hush-hush about them. Even to this day, Narita can't say too much. In an interview with 4Gamer, Narita was asked about Queen of Hearts, and in the most ominous way possible, replied, let's not talk about that. There were so many things that happened, and we caused a lot of trouble in all directions. Well, it's rare that we start one of these retrospectives with legal troubles. Normally, that's the third act twist. So after several years, the team at Watanabe Productions realized they couldn't stay in the dojin sphere much longer. Partly because of the whole legal issues. I mean, it's great game to make games with your friends, but when you have to slide those games to your customers underneath a newspaper asking them if they're a cop, then yeah, I'd imagine that would wear on your psyche. And the larger Watanabe grew, the more eyes they got on them, and the more they realized the dangers of turning this into their career. In that interview with 4Gamer, Narita said, quote, "Our dojin fanfiction activities became a bigger topic than we expected, and we ended up causing a lot of trouble for the various publishers who were the sources of the material. This made us realize the dangers of staying in the dojin field, inside the world of fanfiction."
Yeah, no, we made our money, and we kind of stepped on a few people who we didn't really mean to. Let's just move on and do things legit, I think is the best possible outcome from this. Gotta start somewhere. It's a pretty good start, but we gotta move.
Well, along their career in the dojin sphere, Watanabe Productions would meet the team at Type Moon. Now, if that name sounds familiar, is because Type Moon would one day go on to create the Fate series, a juggernaut in the world of visual novels, which Type Moon is still producing material for today. But at this point, Type Moon was just another dojin circle, and they had recently created their own original visual novel, Tsukihime. This series would blow up for Type Moon, going on.
I never actually watched the Tsukihime anime. I feel like I've heard people say it's not the greatest out there, but it may also just be a lot of the sentiment of just play the original material. I do know these characters though, but I feel like I know of them because of Melty Blood more so than from Tsukihime.
To get multiple installments and even an anime, so Watanabe Productions approached them with the idea of creating a fighting game for the series. This led to the creation of Melty Blood, which was the game that put Watanabe Productions on the map. By the way, for everyone who's been asking me for a Melty Blood retrospective, as soon as I can find a way to play and record the first two PC-only versions of that game, then yes, absolutely. But that's proving to be a little bit difficult. So Watanabe spent the next several years working on Melty Blood, updating the series with multiple installments, and even changing their name from Watanabe Productions to Soft Circle French Bread. Now, the Soft Circle part is a reference to their dojin origins, but as for the French Bread part, according to future team member Kamone Sarazawa, they chose that name because when they started this company, they were all so broke, the only thing they could afford was tap water and convenience store French bread. This team has instantly become the most relatable developers I've ever had to cover on this show.
Yeah, I mean, humble beginnings. When you have a dream, you're not exactly going to be out there with the most amount of funds. We're probably pretty set, though, at least for the first game, thanks to the profits that we made from some of the Dojin games. But yeah, gotta make some money off of this. Gotta make some bangers.
Go. But looks like their days of struggling to survive were finally over. Melty Blood was a big hit, but more importantly, it was a hit that they could sell. Because they were officially licensing this game with Type Moon, that means that they could put this game out in stores. They could actually make money on it through official channels. And so for years, French Bread kept making updated versions of this game, with each installment bringing in brand new players and letting the fan base grow larger and larger. Up until a point. You see, as popular as Melty Blood was, there was something that it couldn't compete with. Time. As the years ticked on and new console generations were on the horizon, French Bread realized that graphics in games were about to take a huge leap. And not only was Melty Blood now starting to look a bit old, it was also starting to look a bit...
Yeah, gotta rework
square.
things.
Yeah, games were about to go from 4x3 to 16x9 ratios, meaning if French Bread wanted to keep making Melty Blood, they couldn't just update it again. They would now have to create a completely new installment. But therein lies the next problem. They had no idea what to do for a new installment. Not in terms of gameplay, but in terms of the plot. According to Narita, quote, the current Melty Blood game's story had become too cluttered due to years of expansions and renovations, so we needed to sort out how to create a sequel. So Narita reached out to Tsukihime's original author, Kinoko Nasu, to ask for help in crafting the sequel to this game. Unfortunately, Nasu is currently too busy with their brand new visual novel, Witch of the Holy Night, and they just didn't have time to help French Bread's team.
Gotcha.
French Bread now found themselves in need of a brand new game, and they needed it quick.
So, is this what leads into Under Night In-Birth? That's why the series are so, like, intertwined with each other? If we can't make a new Melty Blood game, then we just make a completely new IP.
Yeah, I said Melty Blood was a success, but was a success on the scale of a niche arcade fighter in the early 2000s.
Yeah,
It kept the lights on,
massive.
but it didn't give them much of a safety net. So they started looking around for new studios that wanted to turn their properties into fighting games, but nobody was willing to answer that call. So things were looking grim for French Bread. The game that kept them going for half a decade was coming to an end, and they had no jobs on the horizon. But that's when they got the crazy idea, if nobody was willing to hire them, what if they just made their own game?
Hey, this seems kind of familiar, doesn't it? If you want a job done right, you gotta do it yourself.
It sounds obvious, but believe it or not, making your own original game, not that
Hard.
easy. Not
Very
only would they have to
difficult.
come up with everything on their own, but this would also be a huge financial risk for the company.
Oh, for sure. Because you don't have the backing of an already established IP, so you don't already have a fan base there who you can reach out to, right? You have to build a completely new one, and hopefully there will be some Melty Blood players who move over because, you know, it's made by the same company, it has a similar feel to it, but you also have new characters that you're just going to have to get people attached to right off the bat, or else it's just going to get forgotten, and the worst you can be is okay. Just another anime fighter. That's not enough to settle for.
Melty Blood came with a built-in audience, but if they made their own game, there was nobody there to catch them if they fell.
Exactly.
But with no
yeah.
other options, the team came together and decided to take their biggest gamble yet, as they began production on a completely original title. But first, they were going to need an idea. And luckily, designer Seiichi Yoshihara had been waiting for this exact moment, because he had been building up a story in his head ever since high school. He'd already envisioned a whole world full of multiple characters and a deep lore. The initial pitch for this game, which came to be known as Void Red, was about another world beyond what we can see and feel. It would take place in a sci-fi fantasy setting where two races, known as the Worths and Worthlesses, had been at war with each other.
Oh, damn.
The plot largely revolved around a young girl named Lene who had been cursed with the power of resurrection. Lene was found and rescued by a man named Hyde, and over the course of years, he would raise her to use her powers to fight the Worths. This was a rich, detailed setting that Yoshihara had dreamed up. There was just one problem with it. Nobody knew what the hell Yoshihara was talking about. Yet Narita said nobody at the studio really understood this initial pitch because it was too complicated and hard to explain. I'd like to remind you all, this was the team that spent the better part of a decade working on Melty Blood. But confusing or not, they at least had a premise. Unfortunately, they still didn't have a ton of, to put bluntly, experience.
Yeah, that's fair. Like, even now, we're still just kind of making what we can of what we have. And I can't imagine whatever leaps that they had to do in order to start creating games for basically a new console generation. How different that would be on the technical side of things, and how you'd have to manage all that to make sure that you made some sort of profit from it. And honestly, it's so real that, you know, he explained the story, something that he's been thinking about ever since high school, but it comes out as kind of a jumbled mess because, well, I don't know about you guys. I too kind of have like a little narrative, fictional thing going on here. But I couldn't explain it. I couldn't put it into some sort of cohesive story because it's just random thoughts that you have, random shower thoughts sometimes. And that's not good enough to become a narrative that people can get attached to and enjoy, like how you imagine it to be. How do you put that into words? How do you present it in a presentable fashion that is easily understood? We just gotta take those ideas and refine them a little bit.
Not when it came to making fighting games. No, they've been doing that for years. Although the quality of those games, yeah, let's put a pin in that for now. But each of those fighters used designs and characters and stories all based on other sources. So crafting all that completely from the ground up was a whole new ballgame. They needed help, someone who could give them guidance. And luckily, Narita had a connection. He had a friend who had a friend who worked at Arc System Works.
Yeah.
And he got Narita in touch with Toshimichi Mori, aka Mori P, aka the guy who made Blaze Blue. And Narita...
Hey, if you're going for some pretty complex narrative stuff, that's probably the best guy to go to.
And Mori P couldn't have been more different. I mean, just look at them. Mori P comes with his own built-in aura. Narita looks like he's just happy to be there. But Mori P stepped up and agreed to help out this inexperienced team, and he didn't hold back. He put them through character creator boot camp. In a Famitsu interview, Narita was asked about Mori P, and he says the two of them used to meet up at a bar, and he would give Mori a status report, at which point he would, quote, listen to Mori trashing all of our ideas. And he said that right in front of Mori. Mori was there for the interview, by the way. But trashing them or not, apparently Mori's guidance was exactly what this game needed. He gave them advice on the unique mechanics of the game, balance adjustments, and of course, the story.
I mean, sometimes you basically just need somebody there to be honest, right? Like, that idea is kind of garbage, bro. Thank you. Thank you for being honest. The worst thing you could possibly do in this scenario is say, you know what? I think that could work. They invest all the money and time into it, and it doesn't make any money. Company shuts down because somebody wanted to be nice. Yeah, no, I appreciate this so much more.
Narita and the rest of French Bread knew that Yoshiharu's idea for the plot wasn't quite right. They needed some help clearing it all up. Which raises an important question. How complicated was your plot that you needed the guy who made Blaze Blue to simplify it? That game required a pre-existing knowledge of quantum physics to understand it. They showed Mori the sketch of Hyde, who at this point was meant to be an older, jaded Guardian character, and Mori just said, quote,
who we know
make
now.
him look more like a protagonist. And with that one simple bit of advice, the whole game changed. Not only did they make Hyde the new protagonist, but they had to ask, what kind of a protagonist would he be? And they realized, why don't we just write what we know? We spent years in the world of visual novels and light novels. Let's start there. So they made Hyde a high schooler and swapped the setting from a far-off magical sci-fi setting to the modern-day real world. The team began describing this game as a, quote, light novel fighting game. And before I go any further, yes, I am aware that there's a running gag on this channel that I constantly mix up light novels and visual novels. But Narita himself kept referring to this as a light novel fighting game in multiple interviews, so you know what? If I screwed up in this video, it ain't on me this time, okay?
Okay,
I
fair.
am just the messenger on this one. But they also decided to change the tone of the story. Originally, this game was going to be more sword and sorcery with techno-futurism and a dash of lone wolf and cub. Sort of just every cool idea that Yoshiharu had all thrown into a big pot. In other words, every story that we all wrote back in high school. But now the game was going to focus more on a chunibyo style. Chunibyo is a Japanese term that, to put it simply, is about rebellious youth and power fantasies. It's often used to describe kids who dream of having powers to take on the world. Trust me.
You know, honestly, maybe that's why I click with this game so much. I kind of love the whole Chuny persona sort of thing. It's just a lot of fun. As long as, you know, you don't make that your entire personality. But I guess it shouldn't really be all that surprising, considering I'm a pretty big fan of Steins Gate. And just saying that, you guys could definitely see some of the inspirations there with my VTuber model. Like, it's very on the nose.
Even if you haven't heard this term before, you've definitely seen animes and games that have this spirit. And I'm making sure to bring this up because the French bread team would mention this style in many interviews. It was very much the intended tone, and you can definitely see it in the final product. They also greatly overhauled the design of the characters, making them much simpler to match the real-world setting.
This design looks a lot more like another character. Oh yeah, she's here in the top right in the background there. Because yeah, that's not Lineae, but that's much closer to the other one. I forgot her name already, but she's the wind giant sword girl.
And also because according to Narita, working with HD graphics was proving far more difficult than they expected. In fact, Narita was so nervous about moving to HD graphics, he even wondered if they should attempt it at all, and Yoshihara had to convince him that no, this was the future. If we want to create brand new video games, we have to move forward. It feels so weird in 2026 thinking about how people used to be nervous about a concept like 720p. But that wasn't the only thing that Narita was nervous about. After a lifetime of creating works based on other people's projects, French Bread was about to release their own original game, and Narita didn't think it would sell. Narita once said that when he was younger, he liked working in the doujin circles because his team had tried making their own original games before, and they flopped. In fact, they sold so poorly that Narita told 4Gamer, quote, "We were conditioned to think that original works was synonymous with not selling."
I get that. I feel that. It's always rough when you put in so much time and investment into a project that you truly believe is going to work, but then it doesn't. And then trying to shift this to something I'm a little more familiar with. It's like a lot of people who start YouTube, right? And then they start doing their own thing, and the years go by and none of it works. None of it catches on. And you just don't know why. That feeling is so crushing, honestly. And honestly, it might not even be your fault. The algorithm has its way, and nobody knows why it does the things that it does, really. But even after all those failures, all those years of just working on things that don't really catch on, you kind of have to keep on doing it because at some point, it's gonna work. And the person who doesn't give up is the one who achieves that.
Yeah, his team had failed so hard, they didn't even think there was a point in trying to create their own games. And so, a part of him wanted to stay in the doujin circles because creating works based on something that was already a success gave them a layer of protection. It felt safe.
For sure.
But eventually, Narita realized that's not how he wanted this company to operate anymore. That's not what he wanted to keep doing. He said there came a point where thinking about continuing to work on other people's characters and stories filled him with anxiety because it made him think, quote, "In a few years, I'll have nothing left. Before you know it, you completely lose the know-how to create something from scratch, and you become stuck." So as scary as that was, in 2012, French Bread took that leap. They released a game that was completely original, and the rest of the world would now enter the Hollow Knight.
The OP for the first game.
Under Night in Birth hit arcades in September of 2012, although if you've never seen an Under Night cabinet in the wild, that's because it was released on Sega's AltNet PRAS multi-cabinet, which might be the biggest word salad I've ever read off on this show. This was an arcade cabinet that was designed to hold multiple titles that players could select between, but they'd also be digital with access to the internet, allowing the developers to patch in updates as they were needed, and when it came to the original version of Under Night, those updates were indeed needed. You'll get what I mean in a second. But for now, let's talk about what exactly is...
I'm going to assume that French Bread did not properly balance their game, and there were some infinites that could occur.
...is the story of Under Night. Yeah, we talked plenty about what the original premise was, but after changing all the characters around and changing the tone and the setting and everything else from top to bottom, what exactly did they end up with? So the premise of this game is that once a month, under a full moon, the border between this world and another is weakened, and a mysterious boundary appears known as the Hollow Night, often just shortened to the Night. Think of it as a tiny pocket dimension that forms in the real world, but only certain people can see and interact with it.
P3.
The night could form right around you and you'd never even notice it, but you could turn around and see that your friend is gone because they're now stuck in the shadow realm. When you're inside the night, everything looks exactly the same, except everyone from the outside world is gone, and it's crawling with voids. Voids are dark, shadowy figures from another reality, but when the night appears, their reality bleeds into ours. Voids are beastly creatures that can take on many different forms. The weakest of them appear to be just black blobs, but the stronger a void gets, the more its body starts to resemble a human. Now, voids feed on something called Exes, spelled E-X-S. This is essentially the energy of existence, hence the name. It's present in all matter, it's what all life comes from. It's kind of like Chi, Hamon, Nin, Reishi. If you've played enough games, watched enough animes or movies, you're familiar with the concept. So if a human finds themselves in the night, voids will try to eat their exes. However, if you manage to survive a void taking a bite out of your soul and your mind doesn't shatter from the pressure of it, then you'll gain the void's power to manipulate exes. This means you'll be faster, stronger, and your exes can even take on the form of a weapon. Think of it like Bleach if being bitten by a hollow turned you into a Shinigami. That ain't even the only Bleach reference I'm going to make in this video, so apologies to anyone who hasn't seen it.
I have not seen Bleach, but I feel like I have an okay understanding of how it works.
And humans who have gained the power to manipulate exes are known as inbirths. And yes, people have made plenty of jokes about that name, and I will gladly admit it is weird. But when you learn the lore, it actually kind of makes sense. Essentially, if you get attacked by a void and you have your soul ripped apart, when you awaken, you're considered a new being. A being that wasn't born. So, you're called a falseborn, with inbirth being an abbreviated way of saying that. Yes, there are multiple names for the same thing in this game. Did I mention Mori P helped them to write this premise? Now, there's about a dozen other rules surrounding inbirths, but the two big ones that you need to know is that if you use your powers too much, then your exes can consume your body and turn you into a void. But if you don't use your powers enough, then you can lose those powers and you'll return to being a normal human. Now, in case you think this story is too confusing so far, get ready, because now we're flashing back 500 years. Here, a small village in Japan helped out a stranger, and to repay their kindness, this stranger showed them his powers. This man, who would later be known as the Hollow God, taught this village about exes and showed them how to manipulate this energy. Unfortunately, the neighboring village became afraid of their powers, so they attacked. The village then formed a defensive squad known as the Nightblades to defend themselves from outsiders. But this drew the attention of
Seth, right?
A German squad of inbirths known as the Lichtkreis. The Lichtkreis and the Nightblade.
The Lichtkreis is... Well, no, I don't think it's the group Aurier comes from, because I think there's another character, and they're kind of like split between the dudes and the gals.
Went to war with each other, only ending when the leader of the Nightblades, Kuon, saved the injured leader of Lichtkreis, Waldstein. After...
Oh shit, Kuon saved Waldstein? Oh, that's Waldstein? The giant grappler dude? Then what happens to Kuon? He becomes like the main boss of Under Night in-Birth 2.
The elder of the Nightblades decided to take the seal with all the knowledge of Exes and split in two, putting one half of the seal in Kuon and the other half in his sister Lene. Both of them would be granted immortality, Kuon becoming a walking curse, a ghost of a human being, whereas Lene's immortality would take the form of continuous resurrection. Anytime she died, she would be reborn as a child. Now, cut to present day, and there are four main groups involved in our story. There's the Nightblades, except now they're no longer a unified force. They're now more of individuals across the world who enter the Hollow Night to fight voids on their own terms.
Okay.
If they feel like it. Yeah, there's only like 100 Nightblades left, and most of them are effectively retired. They're not the lean, mean fighting force that they once were. Then there's the Lichtkreis, which is still going strong, except that after the battle with the Nightblades 500 years ago, their strongest warrior Waldstein quit because he felt that he owed Kuon a debt. Well, since Waldstein was kind of an item with Lichtkreis' leader, Adelheid, she became so offended by this, she banned all men from serving in this squad. Now,
there you go. Okay, I understand now. That's why the split happened. So no, I got them reversed. No, Lichtkreis is the one with only the ladies. So that's Aurier and Wagner that I know of.
President, and Adelheid has sent a handful of agents over to Japan because she's gotten word that something might be going down with the upcoming night, and she wants them to investigate. Now, the third group isn't really a group, it's the random in-birth individuals who enter the night. This is the big X factor because everyone who gets turned into an in-birth has some kind of a goal, something that keeps them coming back and fighting inside the night. Maybe they're looking for revenge, maybe they're searching for a friend, maybe they're just insane and enjoy getting to go wild with these brand new powers of theirs.
Yeah, Carmine.
But that brings us to the final group, the big villain team of the game, Amnesia. This is essentially a gang of inverts who are seeking to rule over the night, and they're not the only ones. Remember how I said they wanted to give this game a Chunibyo style? That rebellious tone of dreaming of having powers and running wild with them? Yeah, that's kind of what the night turns into. A lot of people who become inverts love the idea of going into the night and fighting to take control, essentially turning this pocket dimension into a giant battle royale each month. And so, numerous inverts have started to come together to form gangs, divine the city up and fighting to take control of it. And Amnesia is the current top dogs. I gotta say, Amnesia might be my favorite villain group in any fighting game because, sure, they are bad guys, but they also just kind of feel like normal people. They hang.
Oh shit, Roger. Didn't Gordeau have somebody who was like a friend in Amnesia and then he like died or something or got turned into a void, which is why he left later on? Might be this dude. I don't remember his exact name though.
Out in a bar, they just have normal conversations, they even feel like friends to each other. I can't really say that about any other villain group in a fighting game. You think anybody in Shaolu cares about each other? I don't even think Bison knew Vega's name. That joke had like 3 different layers to it. Now, in the previous night, Amnesia got into a fight with the last remaining rival gang, Bangikai, and Amnesia's leader Hilda was so powerful that the rival leader Ogre couldn't stand up to her. However, at the center of each night is a collection of endless X's called the Abyss, which is said to be able to grant inverts incredible boost in power. Yes, at the center of this otherworldly dimension is a collection of the big MacGuffin energy that gives you unlimited power. Again, can you tell that Mori P helped him to craft this story? One member of Amnesia,
What was it in voice with the Azure?
Roger, got too close to the Abyss and his body couldn't handle the rush of X's,
No!
and it turned him into a void. The Abyss continued to grow and it looked like there was no way to stop it, so Ogre jumped into it and sacrificed himself to make sure the Abyss would close. Well, Hilda, whose arrogance knows no bounds, said, "Oh, Roger got turned into a void by getting too close to the Abyss? Well, that's a shame. Luckily, I'm just built different." So now the new night has rolled around, and Hilda decides she's going to go to the center of the Hollow Knight, to the Abyss, and absorb its power, turning her into a rebirth, the most powerful form of an in-birth, essentially making her a god. And that is where our story begins. And I mean that quite literally. The game just starts in the middle of all this. In the original release of this game, there's no story or prequel or anything that explains the plot to you. It wasn't until the second home release that they finally added a story mode that told you what was happening. Before that, you just picked a character and they started their arcade mode by saying, "Well, I guess I have to get to the center of the night to stop Hilda." Great! Who is that and what is that? French Bread said they wanted to make this game feel like a light novel fighting game, except they forgot to make the light novel this game would be based on. But that does serve as a good segue to our cast of characters. In the initial arcade release, there were 12 fighters. First up on the side of the Nightblades, there's Lene. We already talked about her in the backstory. She's considered the princess of the Nightblades and is looking for a way to end her cycle of rebirth. Gameplay-wise, she is one of the quickest characters in the game, insanely agile, and is capable of jumping and leaping all over the stage. Also, as you may have noticed, she's got a tiny dragon that follows her around named Ku. Ku is a void that her brother Kuon commanded to follow Lene around and guard her. That's it. Yeah, Ku never comes up in her gameplay.
Well, yeah, I was like, she doesn't use the little dragon like, is her name Zoe, I think, from Grand Blue? Yeah, it's just kind of there. I was wondering whether that had like a gameplay reason, because I tried Olivier, but she never really had any moves with the little guy.
And in all honesty, doesn't even really come up that much in the story. However, Ku has been turned into kind of the mascot of Under Night, so it is worth bringing up. Then there's the other half of our protagonist duo, Hyde. Hyde on the surface is your typical rebellious youth, but underneath all that, he's actually pretty responsible and caring. He even ended up meeting Lene when he thought she was just a normal girl in danger and then walked her home to make sure that she was okay, only to then end up walking into the night and getting attacked by a void. He gained the power to summon out a sword, but not just any sword, the legendary Insulator Sword. This was a sword that was originally given to Lene's brother Kuon 500 years ago by an ancient robot angel.
Batista? Yeah.
We'll get to that soon, don't worry. Why does Hyde have this sword? It's not really explained, but Lene knows that Hyde is in way over his head, and the Insulator could have the power to destroy the seal inside of her, ending her eternal cycle of rebirth. And so she begins to train him. Real big Rukia and Ichigo vibes coming off these two. Now, fun fact, Insulator is the name of Hyde's weapon. In fact, every character's weapon in here has its own name. But their unique X's power also has its own name. And the name of Hyde's power? Void Red. A nice little reference back to the original pitch of this game. Hyde's sword gives him pretty decent normals. He's got fairly average speed, pretty good strength. He's got a few projectiles. As you might expect, he's your typical Protag style character. Your all-rounder. Next.
Hey, the amount of mix-ups he can do, plus the chip damage is kinda nutty. But I suppose that's usual for a protagonist, right? Like, you just have all the tools available to you.
Next up is Waldstein. Remember him from the backstory? He used to be the strongest fighter of the Lich Christ, but during his fight with Kuon, his X's powers overwhelmed him and he almost transformed into a void. But he was saved by Kuon himself, so he swore to repay this debt to his brand new friends. He spent the last 500 years protecting Lene as her giant hulking guardian, but even after all these years, his biggest obsession is battle. He still lives for the struggle of a life and death fight and keeps going out into the Hollow Night hoping to find that. Now at this point you might be wondering, hold on, I know you said that Lene is still alive after 500 years because she was given the gift of immortality.
So why Waldstein?
How is Waldstein still alive? In fact, for that matter, didn't you say that Adelheid, his old boss over at Lich Christ, is also still alive? We'll get into this a little bit later in the story, but essentially, in-birth's bodies don't work the same way as human bodies. Their bodies are essentially vessels at this point to contain their powers, so as long as they're strong enough, they won't be immortal, but they can just keep going. So to put it simply, Lene isn't immortal because if she dies, she'll just come right back. Waldstein is not immortal, he just lives a long, long time, but...
He's too angry to die. I wonder if there will ever be a point where it's like, I am done with battle, and then he just passes. Which would kind of suck for all the people who made him. But I can also see that being like a fitting ending for a character like this.
Someone could actually kill him. However, as you can tell by looking at him, that's going to be easier said than done. With that massive size and those big meaty claws, he is of course the grappler for the game. He's slow, hits like a truck, and loves to pick you up and throw you back down. Then the final member of the Nightblades, Seth. Seth, despite only being a teenager, is an assassin for the Nightblades and is maybe the most jaded character in this roster. He is the classic tortured bad boy of the game. He's also the rival to Hyde because Seth swore that he would be the one to free Lene from her tortured existence. But to do that, he needs the Insulator, and Hyde kinda has that thing fused to his soul.
It's like, what the fuck, bro? Come on, man. Edgy boy got an edge. Not like that, though.
Seth is the big rushdown character of the game. I know I said that Lene was quick. Seth puts her to shame. He is zipping all over the screen, and if you are having a hard time keeping track of him, just wait until he starts placing orbs on the stage that fire out after a set amount of time, forcing you to split your attention between multiple sources, and considering the fact that Seth moves so fast he already feels like he's in two places at once, that is definitely going to be a challenge. Next up is Yuzuriha. Hundreds of years ago, her family was allies with the Nightblades, but after they started to fight with the Lich Christ, her family said, "Y'all are both crazy, we're out." Now in the present, Yuzuriha has inherited her family's sword and the ability to manipulate X's, along with their mission to fight voids. But she doesn't really want to. Yeah, Yuzuriha is an upbeat girl who loves partying, fashion, basically all the joys of the modern world. She'd far rather go out dancing than slaying monsters. In fact, when she walks, you can even see little musical notes fluttering out of her. I love that. It's such a good little bit of animation. She's also childhood friends with Hyde, but the two of them drifted apart after the incident.
Dun dun dun.
What is the incident?
The incident.
Beats me. Yeah, it's never explained. Also, spoiler alert, get ready to hear that a lot. But just because Yuzuriha doesn't want to fight doesn't mean she can't. Her playstyle is all about quick, long-reaching sword slashes. Once she starts slicing you up, she can just keep doing it over and over. Next is the only member of Lich Christ in the starting roster, Orie. She's a very kind, proper girl, but she is 100% dedicated to her mission to destroy voids, which is understandable.
Persona
a void ate her
game.
parents 10 years ago. She's been living in Japan for the past year, going undercover as a student at Hyde's school because the Lich Christ believes that the villain group Amnesia is making a power grab and she needs to investigate. Aurier has the power to summon out a giant stand-like creature called Thanatos. Although, considering the name and the premise of these games, I guess it'd be more fitting to call it a persona. It's a giant humanoid-like figure that she can summon out to fight beside her, and that translates to her being sort of like half a puppet fighter? Yeah, Aurier definitely gives me that feeling like at some stage of development they were meant to be a puppet fighter. In fact, there's some behind-the-scenes stuff we'll talk about soon that definitely backs that up, but that certainly isn't what they are in the actual game.
Yeah, no. It feels more like, what's his name? Carl's dad from BlazBlue. He's using a puppet, but not really. Regulus, was that? Something like that.
Those is not a separate character that you control alongside Aurier. They're more of like an assist in a tag game. Aurier runs in, does her combo, then has Thanatos pop in and do an attack, and then Aurier can continue hitting the opponent afterwards. Next, we're going to be covering the random solo fighters who have found their way into the Hollow Knight, starting with Carmine. Carmine's past is unknown, and he doesn't want to share it. All he cares about is ripping and tearing until it is done. He has a wicked bloodlust and enjoys going into the Hollow Knight to challenge the various gangs who are fighting for dominance. He's sadistic and loves nothing more than making his opponents scream for mercy. He fights with his own blood that he can harden into weapons, making him one of the deadliest inverts to emerge, but because he's literally ripping his own body apart in order to use his powers, it does come at a cost. Translation, Carmine is our glass cannon. He does big damage, but at the cost of his own life. But make no mistake, a lot of other glass cannon characters tend to be kind of unga bunga, just hit buttons and go in. Carmine is not that. Carmine is a very big brain character. He is a mix-up and oaky god. Her players know how to just dominate the entire screen with Carmine attacks, and then the moment the opponent gets knocked down, Carmine's going to start leaving so many traps underneath them that as soon as they get back up again, they are immediately on the defensive again. Then remember how I said that voids mostly appear as blobby, oozy monsters, but the stronger they get, the more humanoid they appear? Well, say hello to Merkaba. He's a void who seeks to devour strong Exus users, but unlike other voids, he can actually communicate. He has...
You know, one of my favorite interactions from BB Tag is between Naoto and Merkaba. There isn't a whole lot behind that, but it's just really sweet.
The power to telepathically talk to humans, and he's actually very well spoken. Don't get me wrong, end of the day, he still wants to eat you, but he can pontificate and philosophize a bit before he does it. This leads many people to ask the question, is Merkaba a void that gained intelligence, or was he a human who turned into a void who still has a few shreds of his mind still intact? I love the way that Merkaba plays. His big long arms give him huge range, and his attacks are so easy to combo together. Also, most of his supers involve him swinging his big, wacky, inflatable tube arms around like he's in front of a car dealership, and I don't care who you are, that's just fun. Just look at him. You can't feel bad looking at that super move. Next, remember when I brought up the whole robot angel thing?
Batista,
well, she's here too.
Here she comes.
Long ago, back before the Night Blades.
Thorgi's 100% going to do another joke here, being like, can you tell that Mori P helped with this story?
In the Lich Trice, a group of robotic angel-like figures were created to observe the Hollow Knight. Who made these angels and how? Don't worry, it's never explained. But during the fight between Kuon and Waldstein, one of these angels appeared and gave Kuon the Insulator Sword. Well, now all these years later, that robot has reawakened, and it's ready to continue its mission to keep the Knight, lowercase, safe from the Night, uppercase. This is Batista, and she is a charge character, and she might be the chargiest charge character to ever charge.
Yeah, she was the first character I ever played that has like a reverse charge move. I believe she's also a part of the meme of how do you approach a girl who's holding down back, or something along those lines. And yeah, against a good Batista, it could feel almost impossible to do so.
Most charge characters have moves where you hold back and then you press forward and a button, or you hold down and then press up and a button. Well, not only does Batista have those moves, she's one of the only charge characters I've ever seen where she has a move where you hold forward and then press back and attack, and a move where you hold up and then press down and attack. As we will soon discuss, the team at French Bread were really, let's say, experimental on this game.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, the rebeat system, I believe it's called, itself is also very unique to this game. I don't think there are any other 2D anime fighters out there that use this system.
Next up is Eltnum, a mysterious visitor from another world. That world? Melty Blood. Yeah, this is literally just the character Sion from Melty Blood using her middle name. I mentioned that French Bread was going to try and do a Melty Blood game with HD graphics, but for various reasons they had to cancel it. Well, they still managed to make some test sprites for the character Sion, and they just decided, you know what? screw it, we got the sprites ready to go, why not just put her in the game? They of course got permission from Type Moon to include her. They didn't just shove her in there without telling anyone. No, this was all official. And her moveset is essentially the same from Melty Blood, including giving her guns with reloading ammo, and they even gave her Melty Blood style aerial throws. As for her story, I love that they didn't even try and hide who she is. She spends the entire time breaking the fourth wall and complaining about having to be in this dumb game. And
you know what? Fair. I think they do the same thing basically for the God damn it. Why is my brain dying today? The German cyborg dude, who was also in BB Tag.
Why doesn't my series have a new game? All you guys suck. You're not as cool as the characters from my game. It's actually kind of hilarious. They even bring up some of the busted stuff about Melty Blood here, and I do love when a game can crack jokes at itself. And that brings us to our final two characters, both members of the villain group Amnesia. There's Gordeau, who is considered to be one of the strongest in-births. Although, despite working for the bad guys, Gordeau is actually super chill. He's a good-natured, laid-back bartender, he's always cracking jokes, and he'll gladly shoot the breeze with anyone. Even if you're his mortal enemy, he'll still have a drink with you. But that all changed the night that Amnesia fought Ogre and his gang, because that was the night that Roger died, and he's blamed himself for it ever since. So even though he's part of Hilda's team, he's still trying to stop her because he doesn't want to see her get consumed and turn into a void as well. Like I said, I really like that we have a villain group in a fighting game that actually cares about each other. Gordeau is a fan favorite character. Everybody loves this guy. Unless you have to fight against him, then everybody hates him. Yeah, in almost every version of Under Night, Gordeau is considered really strong because he spins that scythe all over the screen, making him feel impossible to approach.
Yeah,
also, something that I haven't mentioned yet, each in-burst powers are based on an element, or an emotion, or a concept, typically some kind of a non-tangible force. And Gordeau's power is greed. And I'm bringing that up because if he hits you with a standing raw scythe attack, he'll actually steal some of your meter. No, not that meter, the other meter.
Oh,
yes, there is another meter, we'll get to that soon. But first, there's one more character, the boss of the game, Hilda. I said everyone in Amnesia cares about each other, and that's true for Hilda as well. She definitely cares about her team, but not as much as she cares about power. Hilda is
I mean, you just look at Hilda, you could probably tell what she's about just from her character design. Which actually reminds me, I should definitely do a character design and ranks video with Servi at some point for Under Night, because there's a lot of really fun designs there. And it's in a style that I do think that Servi would enjoy. No ETA yet, though, on whether or not Servi is going to be rejoining us for any of these.
Self-centered, stuck up, and thinks that she deserves all the finer things in life, and by finer things, I mean unlimited godlike powers. Hilda definitely deserves her spot as the final boss, because she isn't just a zoner, she is the zoner. She fills the screen with spikes and spinning blades, and if you somehow manage to get past all that, she can just teleport away and force you to go through that all over again. Now, I know I spent a lot of time on the story and those characters, but there's a reason for that. The team at French Bread really cared about them. When asked what he prioritized the most when creating this game, Narita said he grew up with Fatal Fury, so it was all about the characters.
Gotcha.
If you've heard us talk about SNK before, you know that company was famous for how much lore they gave their fighters. And that definitely rubbed up on Narita when putting this game together. In fact, Narita even said, quote, "As long as the presentation is interesting, the balance doesn't matter." A pretty bold statement for a fighting game dev to make.
I mean, I can't even say he's wrong, because if everything else around it is that interesting, then people will still enjoy it to a certain degree. But if all you're really focusing on is just, you know, balance the game, make every single character as equal as possible, I don't think that really equals fun. And also, I don't even think most casuals care about balance in that sort of way. And nobody really cares about frame data or, honestly, like, level of execution on some characters. I think what they really care about is the character design, the story behind the characters, the story of the game, and probably the biggest one is content behind the game. Like, is there enough content to warrant me spending this much money to play this game?
Which might explain why the initial arcade release of this game was shockingly broken. The original arcade release of Under Night was infamous for how many issues it had, and by issues, I mean every single character had an infinite. And not even infinites that would kill you, because normal attacks in this game did big damage. So to balance that out, they made the damage scaling high. So once you got your infinite going, after a few hits, you'd stop doing damage. So players would literally beat each other by getting them in a 90-second long infinite and making the game time out. So before we go any further, you'll notice I've talked a lot about French Bread's history. but I haven't talked a lot about their, let's call it, quality.
Yeah, that's fair. I felt like I'd heard of French Bread before, and like one of the things they were notorious for was not really balancing the games properly. Okay, if we're going to this degree though, then I think maybe we should pay a little more attention to the balance to at least make sure our characters don't have infinites. Because at that point, you're basically just locking out the other person from even playing the game. And I don't think that's fun for anybody, regardless of how cool the characters look or how flashy the designs are, or the neat story behind it all. If you don't even get to play the game, gotta have some nuance there. Take it to a certain degree. Do not pass the threshold.
Mentioned that they started by making fan games, and fan games are typically known for their passion. They're rarely known for being tightly polished, well-balanced, and mechanically rich. Then they blew up with the Melty Blood titles, but even the most dedicated Melty Blood fans will tell you those games were
not
busted.
Balanced.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that as a bad thing. Not at all. Some of the best fighting games of all time were nutty and broken. But that doesn't change the fact that they were nutty and broken. You might be shocked to hear that every character in Under Night had an infinite. Well, you wouldn't be if you played Melty Blood. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that Melty Blood was the game where you had the video of the dude putting down the controller and taking pictures with people who came to the event when he was in the middle of getting comboed. Because pretty sure he knew that he was not getting out of that anytime soon.
You have to remember, French Bread is a small company. Very small. It was started by a group of friends and coworkers coming together, and it kind of remained that. At the time of this recording, their team consists of only 14 people.
That's
if
a
you
very
just
small
glance
group.
at the credits of Under Night,
Even
they
now.
might seem long, but when you stop and actually read them, there's a ton of names being repeated. There were many employees forced to wear a bunch of different hats in order to make these games. And that did indeed lead to problems in the actual games themselves. One of my favorite examples of this was that according to Kenichi Nohara, the lead programmer for Under Night, back when they were working on
What the
Melty Blood,
fuck? Are you seeing this shit? Is this an infinite air throw?
they didn't have a planner.
Wow.
You know, the person who maps the game out. So the artist on the game would just draw whatever moves they wanted, and then they would just put the hitboxes around those animations however they thought they'd fit. The director of Under Night was Kamone Serizawa, and in a 2024 interview with Anime News Network, he was asked how he got that position. And he replied, quote, "At French Bread, there was really only one person who could act as director, which was me. So when it came time for the plan to put forward, you know, let's make Under Night, it really wasn't much of a choice. It had to be me. In fact, even Serizawa himself fully admits the team at French Bread really didn't understand how to make a balanced fighting game. Most of the employees of that company were friends and former co-workers who came together to pursue their passion. But Serizawa was hired later when French Bread realized they needed someone with more mechanical knowledge of this genre. So they scouted Serizawa, who at the time was a pro Melty Blood player and was running a website where he taught fighting game strategy. Yeah, this guy loves the whole genre. In fact, to this day, he still streams fighting games on Twitch with his pink-haired VTuber avatar. And I bring this up because Serizawa has mentioned that often the artist Yoshihara would come to him and tell him that the moves needed to be cooler, and then he would have to sit him down and explain to him that if they did that, it would kind of break the whole game. Yeah, even after all this time, French Bread was still a studio basically trying to figure things out as they went along. And that went double for Under Night. With the previous games, they had existing sources to pull from, but in this game, since everything was totally original, they were trying out a lot of new ideas, none of which really worked. For example, in an interview with the Under Night in Birth MOOC, which is what you call those really thick magazines that are the size of books. Yeah, I didn't know they had a name either. But according to the Under Night in Birth MOOC, there were several ideas that Yoshihara came up with that made it all the way to the testing phase before they realized, oh wait, that doesn't work. And yes, that's true for all fighting games. Every fighting game is going to have something in concept that doesn't pan out when you actually test it.
Well, yeah, that's why you have to test things, right? Like, you can come up with new and fascinating ideas, but that doesn't necessarily mean all of them are going to work. And we don't exactly have years upon years of experience of creating really big franchises to build off of that, or a massive team of people who know what they're doing. We're all just trying to figure this out, so I think, yeah, you can definitely forgive a lot of a lot of shortcomings when it comes to these games. And I'm definitely always a little more lenient when I know it's more of a smaller team or like an indie studio than I am to like the massive mega corporations who basically just do things to try and make as much money as possible. Here we're just trying to survive, man. Make a fighting game that's fun.
But these weren't ideas like, oh, this move is too quick, we need to adjust that. No, these were things like originally Hyde was going to have a little girl in the story that he'd rescued, and he would have to protect her throughout the match.
Bro.
Yes, Hyde.
No! Infinite escort mission? No!
Was going to be the first fighting game character who was also an escort mission. Or I mentioned Ori has that giant Stan Thanatos that she can summon out. Well, originally, she was also going to have a coffin that she could move around the stage. That's right, she was going to.
Well, when you get the coffin character in Under Night In-Birth 2, then I think things go a little bit crazy. She is so annoying to deal with, but also a lot of fun to play.
Be the rare double puppet fighter. Up until they got to the testing phase and they realized
that's kind of impossible.
Maybe there's a reason you don't often see that. So yeah, when Under Night got announced, the fighting game community perked up. They were interested to see what the Melty Blood devs had in store. And then they saw the end result and they said, oh,
no thanks.
You know what, never mind, we're good. Actually,
Yeah.
that's okay. You can keep this. Yeah, the initial arcade release of Under Night did not
That's
go
unfortunate.
well, but the team at French Bread didn't let that stop them.
Well, the good thing is that we released on an arcade machine where you can actually update the game, so if we didn't do that, we might be dead in the water here.
They continued to tinker with the game, patching out the various problems until September the next year when they released Under Night In-Birth EXE Late, abbreviated as UNIL, a completely updated version of the game that would eventually release on the PS3 in July 2014 in Japan and in February 2015 in the rest of the world. The name EXE Late comes from the abbreviation for extension, and the late refers to...
That's your name. Oh my god. I really like Akatsuki a lot, so kind of embarrassed I forgot his name. Damn it.
Late at night. So they were basically trying to say that we were now traveling even deeper into the Hollow Night. And this is when Under Night really began. Just think of that initial arcade release as a really long beta test, because not only is this when Under Night actually became a functioning fighting game, but thanks to the home release, this is when the majority of the FGC finally got their hands on this title, and what they found was something truly unique.
Alright, not really sure where to pause here, so I think I'm just gonna have to call things here. Running out of time to record, so we'll come back next time and get through all the gameplay and stuff. But yeah, this is making me so happy, honestly. Getting to learn a lot more about these characters that I already know and enjoy. It's kind of a different feeling from a lot of the other retrospectives that we checked out from Thorgi. But yeah, dudes, that's gonna do it from me today. So thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed your time here. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And I'll catch you guys in the next one.